Let me bring this all the way home, because if you catch what I'm about to say, 2026 won't just be another year you survive. It will be the year you step into what God already prepared. We started with one truth that changes everything. Your life will always move in the direction of what you honor first. And that's why you can't keep giving God the leftovers and expect overflow in the next chapter. If God is only included when you're stressed, confused, or desperate, then you're not living by faith and you're living by emergency. But when God becomes your first priority, your first voice, your first move, your first decision, everything else begins to fall into place. Because the kingdom doesn't run on luck, it runs on order. That's why seeking God first is not just spiritual, it's strategic. It's how you stop building a life on pressure and start building a life on purpose. It's how you stop letting your emotions run your schedule and start letting your assignment run your day. Because when God is first, you don't just gain motivation, you gain direction. And direction is what makes your effort effective. Now listen, I'm not against hard work, I'm not against hustle. But hustle without heaven is just noise. It's just exhaustion. It's just movement without progress. And that's why the second key is so powerful. Seek alignment, not hustle. Because God doesn't bless confusion. He blesses alignment. He blesses order. He blesses obedience. When your actions match your assignment, you stop forcing doors and start walking through doors God already favored. And when you're aligned, you don't have to chase what's meant for you. You attract it. Then we took it deeper. Pray for direction, then move. Because prayer isn't a hiding place for fear. Prayer is a launch pad for faith. A lot of people pray, but they don't move. They ask God for change, but they don't change their choices. They ask God for increase, but they refuse discipline. And what you have to understand is this: God will guide you, but he won't drag you. He will speak, but you must step. Faith is not a feeling, faith is motion. The moment you start moving with God, you stop being stuck in someday and you step into right now. Most people don't have a money problem, they don't have a talent problem, they don't have a connection problem, they have a priority problem. Because your life will always move in the direction of what you honor first. And if you keep putting God in the leftovers of your schedule, you'll keep living on leftovers in your results. You can't give God what's left and expect him to bless what's next. That's not how the kingdom works. The kingdom is built on order. The first thing gets the power. The first thing gets the focus. The first thing gets the authority. And when you make God first, everything else finds its proper place. You want 2026 to be different? Then stop trying to change the year and start changing the order. Stop waking up and checking your phone before you check your spirit. Stop feeding your anxiety before you feed your faith. Stop letting the world set the temperature of your mind before the word sets the direction of your life. Because whatever you start your day with becomes the foundation your day stands on. If you start your day with stress, you'll build a stressed life. If you start your day with comparison, you'll build a jealous life. If you start your day with panic, you'll build a fearful life. But if you start your day with God, you build a life that cannot be shaken. Putting God first daily is not a religious slogan. It's a strategy. It's the highest level of intelligence. It's the secret that makes ordinary people walk in extraordinary outcomes. It's how you stop living in reaction and start living in revelation. It's how you stop chasing and start attracting. Because when you seek God first, you don't just get information, you get instruction. And instruction is the shortcut most people will never access. People are out here grinding, trying to force doors open, trying to convince people to like them, trying to make things happen, trying to hustle their way into a miracle. But you don't hustle your way into a miracle. You obey your way into a miracle. You align your way into a miracle. You surrender your way into a miracle. When you put God first, you stop asking life for permission. You stop waiting for people to validate you. You stop shrinking your dreams to fit other people's comfort, because you realize you were never called to be approved by everyone. You were called to be assigned by God. And once you understand assignment, you stop being distracted by applause. You stop being addicted to attention. You stop needing to be seen. You become satisfied being led. And that's where power is. The devil can't stop a person who is led by God. People can block opportunities, but they can't block obedience. People can close doors, but they can't close destiny. People can misunderstand you, but they can't uncall you. Putting God first means you make him the first voice you hear, not the news, not social media, not your past, not your doubts, not the opinions of people who have never built what you're trying to build. It means you let God speak before you speak. You let God define you before the world labels you. You let God shape your identity before trauma tries to rewrite it. Because if you don't let God tell you who you are, the world will tell you who you're not. And you'll spend your whole life trying to prove something that God already promised. Putting God first daily means you don't just pray when you're in trouble. You pray because you're in training. You don't read scripture because you're desperate. You read scripture because you're disciplined. You don't worship only when you feel good. You worship because worship keeps your heart clean. It keeps your spirit sharp. It keeps your mind anchored. It reminds you that your life is not held together by your strength. It's held together by his grace. And grace is not permission to be lazy. Grace is power to become who you were created to be. Some people say, I'm too busy. No, you're not too busy. You're too distracted. And distraction is the enemy of destiny. You make time for what matters. You make time for what you love. You make time for what you prioritize. So if God is not first, it's not because you don't have time. It's because you don't have order. And the moment you restore order, you restore power. The moment you restore order, you restore peace. The moment you restore order, you restore momentum. You want to unlock more in 2026, then put God first in your money. Not because God needs your money, but because your money needs God. Your finances will always follow your faith. Where your treasure is, your heart will be there also. And if your money is your master, you will always be stressed. But if God is your master, money becomes a tool, not a torment. When you honor God with your first, you break the spirit of lack. You break the fear of not having enough. You break the anxiety that keeps you clenching instead of creating, because scarcity makes you hold back, but faith makes you build. Put God first in your relationships. Stop letting broken people counsel you about healing. Stop letting bitter people speak into your future. Stop letting undisciplined people influence your decisions. The people closest to you either water your purpose or weaken your passion. And when God is first, you choose relationships based on assignment, not just attraction. You choose connections based on growth, not just comfort. You stop settling for company that costs you clarity, because you can't walk into a new season with old voices controlling your direction. Now let's talk about this second point, because this is where people get exposed. Seek alignment, not hustle. Hustle is not the problem. Hard work is not the problem. Effort is not the problem. The problem is hustle without heaven, effort without alignment, work without wisdom, because you can work hard and still be wrong. You can grind all day and still be off course. You can be busy and still be broke. You can be moving and still be lost. Movement is not progress if it's in the wrong direction. Alignment is when your actions match your assignment. Alignment is when your decisions agree with your destiny. Alignment is when your daily habits support your divine calling. And God blesses alignment, because alignment produces flow. When you're aligned, you don't have to force what God already favored. You don't have to beg for what God already prepared. You don't have to manipulate what God already scheduled. You don't have to fight for what God already assigned. You just have to walk it out. Some of you are tired because you're pushing something God never told you to carry. You're exhausted because you're building something God never told you to build. You're frustrated because you're trying to make something happen that God never endorsed. And you keep calling it ambition, but it's actually misalignment. You keep calling it dedication, but it's actually distraction. You keep calling it grind, but it's actually fear. Fear that if you don't do everything, nothing will happen. Fear that if you don't control everything, you'll lose. Fear that if you slow down, you'll fail. But faith says, God is my source, not my speed. Alignment doesn't mean you do less. It means you do what matters. It means you stop spending your life proving and start spending your life producing. It means you stop chasing 10 things and start mastering the one thing God called you to do, because focus is a spiritual weapon. The devil doesn't have to destroy you if he can distract you. He doesn't have to stop you if he can scatter you. He doesn't have to break you if he can keep you busy with the wrong battles. God blesses order because order is evidence of lordship. When God is Lord, your life gets organized, your time gets protected, your mind gets renewed, your habits get refined, your choices get cleaner, your priorities get sharper. You stop living by feelings and start living by faith. You stop waiting until you feel like it and start doing it because it's right, and that's how you win. Winners don't wait for motivation. Winners move with conviction. You can't expect God to bless chaos. Chaos is expensive. Chaos costs you time. Chaos costs you peace. Chaos costs you relationships. Chaos costs you opportunities. And most people don't need a new opportunity. They need a new operating system. They need discipline. They need structure. They need standards, because your standards create your results. Your standards create your environment. Your standards create your future. Alignment is waking up and doing what you said you were going to do, even when your emotions are screaming. Alignment is telling the truth, even when lying would be easier. Alignment is honoring your commitments, even when nobody is watching. Alignment is building character in private so you can handle favor in public. Because God is not just preparing your blessing, He's preparing you for the blessing. When you seek alignment, you stop trying to get God to follow your plan and you start following His. And that's where the acceleration happens. That's where the doors open. That's where the right people show up. That's where the opportunities multiply. That's where the ideas download. That's where peace becomes your portion. Not because life gets easier, but because you're finally walking in the lane you were designed for. Somebody needs to hear this. You don't need more hustle. You need more heaven. You don't need more pressure, you need more presence. You don't need more noise, you need more clarity. You don't need more striving, you need more surrender. Because when you surrender, you don't lose, you align. And when you align, you don't struggle, you flow. And when you flow, you don't chase, you attract. So in 2026, make the decision that God is not your backup plan. God is your blueprint. God is not your emergency contact. God is your daily counselor. God is not the last resort. God is the first response. And when you put Him first and you seek alignment over hustle, you will watch your life shift from stress to strength, from confusion to clarity, from lack to abundance, from fear to faith, from surviving to building, from barely making it to walking in overflow. Most people think prayer is a substitute for movement, but prayer was never designed to replace action. Prayer is designed to produce direction. And direction is what separates people who stay stuck from people who step into destiny. Because you can have passion and still be lost. You can have talent and still be confused. You can have ambition and still be misaligned. But when you pray for direction and then you move, you stop wandering and you start winning. A lot of people are praying for God to do what He already empowered them to do. They're asking God for confidence, but He already gave them a sound mind. They're asking God for provision, but He already gave them gifts. They're asking God for change, but they refuse to change their choices. And what you have to understand is this: God is not going to override your responsibility. He will guide you, but He won't drag you. He will speak, but He won't force you. He will open doors, but you still have to walk through them. Prayer is not just talking to God. Prayer is tuning your spirit to heaven's frequency. It's how you silence the noise of the world and hear the whisper of wisdom. It's how you trade anxiety for assurance. It's how you exchange pressure for peace. Because when you pray, you're not just asking for things, you're becoming the kind of person who can carry the things you're asking for. And that's why prayer works. Not because it changes God, but because it changes you. Some of you don't need another motivational video. You need a moment in the presence of God where your heart gets recalibrated. Because the reason you keep procrastinating is not laziness, it's confusion. The reason you keep starting and stopping is not because you lack discipline, it's because you lack clarity. The reason you keep doubting is not because you're weak, it's because you're listening to too many voices. Prayer brings you back to one voice, the voice that created you, the voice that knows the end from the beginning, the voice that can see what you can't see. But here's the part that separates believers from builders. After you pray, you must move, because faith that never moves is faith that never matures, and faith that never matures never manifests. People love the comfort of prayer, but they fear the courage of action. They want God to give them a sign, but God is waiting for them to take a step. They want confirmation, but God is looking for commitment. They want certainty, but God rewards trust. You don't need to know every step. You just need to know the next step, because God rarely gives you the whole blueprint at once. He gives you enough light for today, enough strength for this season, enough wisdom for the next decision. Why? Because if God showed you the whole journey, you'd either get overwhelmed or you'd get arrogant. You'd either quit early or you'd try to take credit. So God gives you the next instruction, and your obedience unlocks the next level. Some of you are praying for a miracle, but the miracle is hidden inside the movement you keep postponing. The miracle is in the phone call you keep delaying. The miracle is in the application you keep avoiding. The miracle is in the apology you keep resisting. The miracle is in the routine you keep refusing. And you keep asking God to change your life, but God is saying, change your schedule. Because your schedule is proof of what you believe. If you believe God is leading you, you will move. If you believe God is with you, you will act. If you believe God is for you, you will build. Because the devil cannot stop a person who is moving in faith. He can't stop your steps when they're ordered. He can't block your progress when you're obedient. He can't confuse your future when you're committed to the voice of God. Now let's talk about this next point, because this is where the supernatural becomes practical. Obedience unlocks overflow. Overflow is not random. Overflow is not luck. Overflow is not just being in the right place at the right time. Overflow is the reward of alignment. Overflow is the fruit of obedience. Overflow is what happens when you do what God told you to do, even when it doesn't make sense to your logic. Some people want overflow, but they don't want obedience. They want the harvest, but they don't want the seed. They want the breakthrough, but they don't want the discipline. They want the promotion, but they don't want the preparation. They want the testimony, but they don't want the test. And it doesn't work like that. In the kingdom, the way up is down. The way to increase is surrender. The way to multiply is to trust God more than you trust your comfort. Obedience is powerful because it proves you trust God's wisdom over your own. It proves you believe God's timing over your emotions. It proves you believe God's promise over your present. And when God sees that kind of trust, He releases favor you didn't earn, opportunities you didn't chase, doors you didn't force, connections you didn't manipulate. That's overflow. That's the hand of God on your life. But let me make it even more real. Obedience often looks small at first. It looks like waking up early when nobody claps. It looks like saying no to distractions. It looks like cutting off what's killing your spirit. It looks like being honest when lying would be easier. It looks like staying consistent when quitting would be convenient. It looks like serving when you want to be seen. It looks like giving when you feel like you don't have enough. And that's why most people miss overflow, because they despise small beginnings. Small steps trigger big doors. One prayer can shift your perspective. One decision can break a generational cycle. One act of obedience can change the entire trajectory of your life. Because God doesn't need your resources, He needs your readiness. He doesn't need your perfection, He needs your participation. He doesn't need you to feel fearless, He needs you to move while you still feel afraid. You have to understand, delayed obedience is disobedience. And disobedience always has a cost. It costs you peace. It costs you momentum. It costs you time. It costs you opportunities that were assigned to your season. Some of you have been praying for years, but the prayer has already been answered in the instruction you keep ignoring. God already told you to start. God already told you to forgive. God already told you to leave that environment. God already told you to commit. God already told you to be consistent, but you keep negotiating with the very instruction that's connected to your overflow. And the reason obedience unlocks overflow is because God can trust you with more when you're faithful with less. If you can't steward a little, you'll sabotage a lot. If you can't handle a small blessing, a big blessing will expose you. So God tests your obedience in the small places. He tests your integrity in private. He tests your discipline when nobody is watching, and every time you pass the test, you expand your capacity. Overflow isn't just about money. Overflow is peace when life is chaotic. Overflow is joy when things are uncertain. Overflow is confidence when others are doubting. Overflow is strength when your body feels weak. Overflow is wisdom when the world is confused. Overflow is being so anchored in God that you stop panicking about what you can't control and you start building what you can. And finally, we hit the principle that separates wishers from winners. Obedience unlocks overflow, not because obedience is easy, but because obedience is powerful. Overflow is not random. Overflow is not a lucky break. Overflow is the reward of alignment. It's what happens when you obey quickly, obey consistently, and obey even when it stretches you. Small steps open big doors. Quiet obedience creates loud results. And the truth is, God can trust you with more when you're faithful with what you already have. So here's the full picture. Put God first daily. Seek alignment, not hustle. Pray for direction, then move. Obedience unlocks overflow. That's the blueprint. That's the code. That's the kingdom way. And I'm speaking to you right now like this is personal, because it is. 2026 is not waiting on your feelings. It's waiting on your faith. It's waiting on your obedience. It's waiting on your decision to stop living distracted and start living directed. Stop letting fear write your future. Stop letting your past define your potential. Stop letting comfort delay your calling. Because when God becomes your foundation, your confidence becomes unshakable. When God becomes your priority, your progress becomes inevitable. When God becomes your source, your supply becomes unstoppable. This is your moment to get serious, to get focused, to get aligned, to stop negotiating with the instruction that's connected to your breakthrough, to stop praying for what God already told you to start walking toward. And if you're ready to make 2026 the year everything changes, stay connected right here with Myron Golden's Legacy Academy, because we're not just here to hype you up. We're here to build you up, elevate your mindset, strengthen your faith, and help you walk in the purpose God put inside you. And watch what God does with your yes, because the moment you take that step, you already know what happens next. You don't need a new year. You need a new order.